My husband was cruel. He kept insulting me because I couldn't bear him a son. 7 years later, we ended up in court, and he couldn't believe what I'd done. The sound of Scott slamming his fist on the table shook our entire house. The dinner I'd lovingly prepared scattered across the floor. It was a heartbreaking scene that showed just how insensitive a husband he'd become. "If I'd known you weren't a real woman, I never would have married you," Scott yelled. Those words cut through my heart like a sharp knife. With tears in my eyes, I said, "Scott, how can you say such a thing? I've given you everything. I've always loved you faithfully." Scott, still fuming, replied, "Your tears mean nothing to me. You're a disappointment. You're a woman who can't give me what I want most." With a trembling voice, I stammered, "Really, Scott? I'm sorry I couldn't meet your expectations. But I'm more than just my ability to have children." Scott scoffed, "You'll never understand, Kendall. What it means to be a real man, to have a son to carry on your bloodline. I need a boy. You've failed at that." Even now, 7 years after that incident, the memory of those cruel words still echoes in my mind. How could he become so cold? So insensitive? Why did he change so much after we got married? What did I do to deserve such treatment? I'm still asking myself these questions. Scott and I met in school and started dating when we were 15. He was a hardworking and thoughtful young man towards me back then. "Kendall, you're glowing today. That blouse looks incredibly good on you," he'd say. A little embarrassed, I'd say, "Oh, thank you, Scott. You always compliment me and make me feel special." Scott would continue, "It's because it's true, Kendall. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. This isn't just because we're dating. I feel it deep in my heart." With joy, I'd add, "Scott, you always make me feel loved. You're the best boyfriend anyone could have." Our relationship was always full of beautiful words like this. But things changed after we got married. Scott's dream was to have a son, but as the years passed, I didn't get pregnant. With that came constant insults, looks of contempt, and unfair blame that hurt my heart. "Kendall, we've been trying for a kid for so long now. Why is it taking so much time?" he'd ask. I'd answer sadly, "I don't know, Scott. I want it to happen just as much as you do, but it seems to be out of our hands." Scott would retort, "But we need a child, Kendall. I've been dreaming of having a son to carry on my bloodline and continue our family name." With tears in my eyes, I'd barely manage to say, "I understand, Scott. I want that too. But it's not something we can completely control." Scott would angrily respond, "I can't stand waiting anymore." That night, Scott's face was red with anger as he suddenly stood up and yanked the tablecloth. All the dinner dishes fell to the floor. The sound of the door slamming echoed through the house, followed by an echo of the emptiness growing inside me. "This isn't right. I got married to be happy, not to be insulted," I said. I knelt on the kitchen floor, picking up the shattered pieces of our dinner. My eyes were a mix of sadness and determination. And I continued, "I've got to make a decision. There's no reason to be insulted like this every day. I'm gonna get a divorce." I started packing my bags. I carefully folded my clothes and put them in the suitcase. Each item was a painful reminder of what were once shared dreams. Yet, they have been shattered by Scott's cruel words. The night was heavy with tension. I was organizing my few belongings in the suitcase, with a determination only a wounded heart knows. Those items were a collection of memories and broken dreams. Each piece of clothing felt heavier than its physical weight. Each folded garment was an act of courage, a step towards freedom from the emotional prison our marriage had become. As I closed the suitcase with a sigh of resignation, I felt a mix of sadness and relief wash over me. It was time to leave this abusive relationship behind and move forward, seeking a life where I'd be truly loved and valued. As I took one last look at the apartment that was once my home, I started to cry. My eyes were fixed on the walls that had witnessed so many happy moments. They were then tainted by the shadows of the past. I sighed deeply, feeling the weight of the years on my shoulders, and whispered sadly, 8 years. 3 years of dating and 5 years of marriage. How did everything change so suddenly? How did we lose our way? At that moment, I brought a glass of water to my lips, quenching my thirst with the cool, clear liquid. But that liquid couldn't quench the thirst I had for love and respect. What happened to us, Scott? I asked aloud. My voice echoed in the lonely kitchen. We were so happy, weren't we? We were so in love. Where did we go wrong? No answer came except for the empty echo off the walls, but I kept talking as if to chase away the demons tormenting my heart. I loved you with all my heart, Scott. I gave you everything I had. I believed our love could overcome any obstacle. But in the end, I was crushed by the expectations you placed on me. By the dreams I couldn't fulfill. I set down the empty glass with a resigned sigh, feeling the pain and frustration built up inside as I continued, I know I've got to move on. It's the only way I'll find the happiness I want. But it hurts, Scott. It hurts more than I can explain. As I took one last look at the now quiet kitchen, I stood up. I felt a new determination in my veins. I knew the road ahead would be tough and uncertain, but I also knew it was the only possible path to find the peace I was seeking. With hesitant but determined steps, I headed for the door. Leaving behind not just the empty apartment, but also the shadows of a painful past, stepping out towards the glow of an uncertain but new dawn. After I left, Scott apparently wandered the dark streets on the other side of town. He was tormented by the bitter words he had spoken. Realizing he had made a terrible mistake in hurting me in such a cruel and unfair way, regret was consuming him like a raging fire. How could I have become so insensitive? How could I have hurt the only person I've ever truly loved? He reportedly muttered to himself. Those words disappeared into the emptiness of the night. He now seemed overwhelmed with guilt, vividly remembering the look of pain in my eyes, how his sharp words had torn my soul apart. I love her. More than anything in this world, he confessed in a low voice, it seemed. As if by admitting it, he could somehow ease the pain he had caused. But love alone ain't enough. I failed to be the husband she deserves. I failed to understand her pain and suffering, he supposedly thought. And now, as the weight of his choices bore down on him, he was facing an abyss of regret he didn't know how to escape. I gotta fix this, he reportedly told himself, his voice full of determination and despair. I'm gonna go home and beg her forgiveness. It's the least I can do now. As Scott approached the house, he apparently became absorbed in an agonizing inner dialogue. Scott, what are you doing? You've ruined everything. You've thrown away the love of your life, he seemingly chastised himself. His voice was said to be full of self-reproach. I'm willing to do anything to make things right. But what if it's too late? What if she never looks at me the same way again? A small, doubtful voice in his heart supposedly asked. Scott swallowed hard, feeling overwhelmed by the weight of uncertainty. I can't think like that. I've gotta believe there's still a chance. That I can still make things right, he apparently declared with determination. He tried to shake off the doubts threatening to engulf him. Then do it. Stop whining and do what you gotta do, the voice in his head apparently pushed him towards the front door. Scott took a deep breath, preparing to face the unknown waiting on the other side of the door. Here goes. I'm gonna apologize and show Kendall how much I love her, he reportedly promised himself. His voice was choked with barely contained emotion. Scott reached out with a trembling hand towards the doorknob worn smooth by the passage of time. As he felt the cold metal under his fingertips, his heart was pounding in his chest. It was an echo of the accelerating rhythm of his confused thoughts. Taking a deep breath, he closed his eyes for a moment. He was seeking for strength to face the challenge waiting on the other side of the door. Scott turned the doorknob, apparently feeling the familiar resistance give way under his shaking fingers. A low creaking sound echoed in the entrance, creating a discordant note in the pervasive silence. As the door slowly opened, revealing the dimness of the house's interior, Scott prepared to face the unknown waiting on the other side. Scott raised his eyes and met my gaze. Our eyes locked onto each other's, like invisible magnets drawn together. The weight of unspoken words hung between us. I remained motionless. My expression must have shown conflicting emotions. My eyes likely reflected the pain and disappointment Scott had caused, but at the same time, they might have mirrored a stubborn spark of hope, a fragile possibility of forgiveness and reconciliation. Silence stretched between us, heavy with unexpressed meaning. For what seemed like an eternity, we stared at each other, our hearts beating in unison, echoing the accelerating rhythm of conflicting emotions. Finally, Scott hesitantly stepped into the house. His determination seemed mixed with a healthy dose of anxiety. "Kendall, please. Don't do this. I know I've been a fool. I know my words were cruel and unfair," he said. His voice was choked with barely contained emotion. I looked up at the man I once loved, now a stranger in my eyes. "Scott, it's too late for apologies. You've insulted me and made me feel unworthy of love or respect," I declared. "I gave everything to this relationship, but now I need to love myself more than I love you." The strength in my voice surprised even me. Scott took a hesitant step towards me, as if reaching for a past slipping through his fingers, and said, "I can't change what I've done, but I promise I'll change. Kendall, I love you more than anything in this world. My life has no meaning without you." I hesitated for a moment. Staring at the man before me, I tried to decipher the true intentions behind his words. "Scott, I want to believe you. But the wounds you've inflicted can't be easily erased with empty promises," I confessed. My voice was thick with the weight of emotion. Scott lowered his eyes. His expression was a mixture of regret and determination. And he answered, "I know I can't change the past, Kendall. But I swear from the bottom of my heart, I'll do everything in my power to fix what I've broken. I love you more than my own life. Without you, I'm nothing." I said with a trembling voice, "Scott, I don't know if I can trust you anymore. But I want to believe we still have a chance. That we can still find our way back to each other." Scott slowly approached. "Please, Kendall. Give me a chance to prove I can be the man you deserve," he pleaded. His voice was a whisper full of emotion. I looked into his eyes and asked, "How can I believe you? How can I know you won't hurt me again?" He took a deep breath and answered, "I understand your doubts, Kendall. I can't promise we'll never face difficulties again. But I can promise to be by your side every day, doing my best to be worthy of your love and respect." His eyes met mine as he continued, "I know it'll take time to regain the trust I've broken. But I'm prepared to wait. I'm prepared to fight for you. Because you're the most important person in the world to me." I felt fear and hope, uncertainty and love. Is he really being sincere with me? Am I being too hard on him, overreacting? I stared into Scott's eyes, searching for the truth behind his words, looking for signs of redemption in his gaze. Suddenly, Scott said, I'm a man. You've gotta understand my position. He started to use harsh words again. I felt a chill run down my spine. Hearing Scott's words, I feared that despite his promises of change, he might still have remnants of the man who once hurt me deeply. Scott, this isn't about positions. It's about mutual respect, I replied. My voice was firm but filled with disappointment. Scott lifted his chin defiantly, his expression hardening. Don't you get it, Kendall? As a man, I've got responsibilities. Expectations to fulfill. I need a son to carry on my bloodline, to continue the family name. Scott's words cut like a sharp knife. A painful reminder of everything I'd endured over the past few years. I'm more than my ability to bear children, Scott, I responded. My voice trembled with indignation. I have value as myself. Not just for what I can give you, I concluded. Scott rolled his eyes dismissively. You'll never understand what it means to be a real man, to have a son to carry on your bloodline. I need a boy. My anger boiled inside. You don't have the right to judge me based on what my body can or can't do. I am a real woman. And regardless of your opinion on what a real man is, I deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, I said. My voice shook with barely contained anger. Scott snorted contemptuously. You'll never understand, Kendall. You're just a woman. You can't comprehend the weight of expectations on a man's shoulders. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. A complex mix of anger and sadness. Seems like you'll never change, Scott, I said with disappointment. Scott snorted again, his expression hardening further. I am who I am, Kendall. I ain't gonna apologize for that. If you can't accept it, maybe it's best we go our separate ways. Scott's response hit me like a punch. Then maybe that's for the best, Scott. I can't keep living in the shadow of what we once were. I deserve more than to be constantly belittled and devalued. Scott narrowed his eyes. You'll regret this, Kendall. I'm the best man you'll ever get. I took a deep breath, ignoring the sharp pain in my chest. I'd rather be alone than live in a relationship where I'm not valued, I declared. I'm sorry, Scott. But I can't keep living a lie. Goodbye, I said. My voice was steady despite the lump in my throat. Scott watched as I left. I took with me not just my clothes, but also hope for a future that could no longer be the same. And so, amid tears and sighs, I set out in search of a new dawn. Leaving behind a painful past, but carrying with me a promise of a future full of possibilities, and who knows, maybe even true, pure love. I felt my heart tighten as I walked down the street. With just a small suitcase containing my few belongings. I knew this decision meant leaving behind not just a relationship, but an entire life of shared dreams. But I refused to turn back. I deserved more than to be constantly belittled and undervalued. With determined steps, I arrived at my childhood friend Erica's house. For a moment, I paused in front of the door, feeling the weight of my decision on my shoulders. But with a resigned sigh, I raised my hand and knocked. The sound echoed down the quiet street. It didn't take long for the door to open. On the other side appeared Erica's warm figure. Her eyes widened as she saw me, suitcase in hand, with a mix of determination and sadness on my face. Kendall, what are you doing here at this hour? Erica asked. Her voice was full of worry and surprise. I swallowed, feeling tears welling up as I answered, Erica. I need a place to stay. Please. I've got nowhere else to go, I confessed. My voice was choked with barely contained emotion. Without hesitation, Erica opened the door wider, making space for me to enter. Of course, Kendall. You're always welcome here, she said. Her voice was soft and full of comfort. Kendall, I'm your friend. You can count on me for anything. What happened? As I poured my heart out to Erica, the words flowed like a river of pent-up emotions. I talked about the humiliation I'd endured, Scott's cruel words, and the painful decision to leave. To leave behind everything that was once my home. Erica listened carefully, seeming pained to see me so affected. She enveloped me in a comforting hug, offering the shoulder of a friend needed in this difficult time. Kendall, I'm so sorry for everything you've been through, Erica said. Her voice was soft and full of comfort. But I want you to know you're not alone. I'm here to support you in whatever you need. I looked into Erica's eyes. There must have been a glimmer of gratitude in my gaze. Thank you, Erica. I don't know what I'd do without you, I murmured. My voice was choked with gratitude. You're the light at the end of the tunnel, the hope that keeps me going. Erica smiled gently. I'd do anything for you, Kendall. You're an amazing person and deserve all the happiness in the world. Let's get through this tough time together and find a new beginning, Erica said softly. I was extremely down after the end of my marriage. For a week, I didn't eat or bathe. Without the strength to do anything, I thought about going back home many times. But I realized those were just my dark thoughts. Is it worth going back to that place that was once my refuge? That place was the epicenter of all my pain and suffering. I've faced so much. But facing his accusing gaze again is more than I can bear, I thought. I felt a chill run down my spine. Sometimes, in the stifling silence of empty rooms, I allowed myself to dream of a different future. If only I could build a new life where pain and sadness were replaced with happiness. Somewhere inside me, a weak but persistent voice whispered, "There's still hope." I keep fighting every day, believing that someday, I'd find the peace and happiness I longed for. One day, Erica came into my room with a warm laugh. "Kendall, I've got great news for you," she said, holding an envelope in her hand. I looked up, listless but curious. "What is it?" I asked. Erica held out the envelope to me, her smile widening. "I found a job for you. As a receptionist at a law firm." I stared at the envelope in my hands. A mix of surprise and gratitude spread through my chest. "Erica, I don't know what to say," I murmured. My voice was choked with emotion. "Thank you. I really needed this." Erica hugged me lovingly, sharing in my joy. "You deserve this, Kendall. I'm sure you'll do a great job with this position. And who knows, this might be the start of a new chapter in your life." She said that with a trembling smile on her lips. I opened the envelope and read the employment details. It was a formal letter from the law firm, expressing interest in making me part of their team based on Erica's recommendation. The position and benefits details were clear, and there was even a personal note from the manager highlighting my skills and qualities that made me chosen for the position. This is my chance for change, I thought. My hands trembled slightly. Each detail of the position and benefits listed in the letter seemed like a promise of a new beginning, a promise of the life I'd been longing for. They really believe in me, I whispered to myself. I felt driven by a new determination. "Erica, how did you get this for me?" I asked curiously. Erica smiled. "Remember my aunt who works at that law firm? She told me they needed a new receptionist and asked if I knew anyone interested. I immediately thought of you," she explained. There was a glow of pride on her face. I was deeply touched by Erica's actions. "I can't believe you thought of me for this." "Thank you, Erica. Really. A sense of relief and gratitude enveloped me. I imagined the possibilities the future held. For the first time in a long while, I felt a little lighter. A little hopeful about what fate has in store for me. And with Erica by my side, I knew I could face any challenge that came my way. I threw myself into my new job at the law firm. The busy daily routine and interactions with clients and lawyers gave me a special insight into the world of law. Witnessing up close the struggles and challenges faced by people seeking justice deeply moved my heart. During this period, I began to think about what kind of difference I could make in people's lives and how I could fight for justice. And after immersing myself in this challenging environment for a year, I made a courageous decision. I decided to enroll in law school. The start of college brought a new set of challenges and opportunities for me. I immersed myself in my studies with dedication and determination, trying to overcome each obstacle that appeared in my path. My enthusiasm and passion for law quickly caught the attention of my professors, who praised my academic excellence. I stood out not only for my intelligence and academic ability but also for my compassion and empathy for others. Kendall, your performance in the mock trial was outstanding. Your ability to argue and your professional ethics are commendable. I look forward to seeing your future projects in the legal field, said the constitutional law professor. One of my classmates added, Kendall, you're an inspiration to all of us. Your passion for the law and desire to help others motivates us to be better students and future lawyers. Really, Kendall, you have a special ability to understand the nuances of legal cases, which helps us see beyond what's obvious. You'll make a great lawyer, another classmate responded. Kendall, your dedication to your studies and professional demeanor are noteworthy. You're showing a commendable commitment to the legal field. I'm confident you have a bright future career ahead of you, the professor concluded. Thank you all for your support and praise. It means a lot to me to know that my efforts are recognized by you, I said. I'm really committed to becoming the best professional I can be. And I hope to continue actively contributing to our class and the legal field. Thank you for your encouragement and trust in me. One day, as I was drinking orange juice in the college cafeteria, a classmate named Ethan approached me and said, Hey, Kendall. I wanted to talk to you. Mind if I sit here? Sure, Ethan. Have a seat, I replied. I wanted to tell you that I think you're always amazing in class. You're so smart and proactive. Oh, thank you, Ethan. I'm glad you think so. Ethan added, and to be honest, you're really beautiful. You always catch my eye, he said, his eyes shining. I replied with a shy smile, Oh, thanks for the compliment, Ethan. That's sweet of you. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure, I answered. Do you have a boyfriend? The young man asked. I got so nervous that I let the glass of orange juice slip from my hand, and it fell to the floor, spilling liquid on the table and cafeteria floor. I felt my face turn red with embarrassment, and I quickly apologized while trying to clean up the mess with napkins as people around us looked on with curious glances. Don't worry, I'll help you clean up, Ethan said. Thank you, I replied with a grateful smile, continuing to wipe up the mess around us. Kendall, are you okay? You seem to get nervous all of a sudden. Did something happen? Ethan asked with a concerned look. I hesitated for a moment. Feeling the blush continue on my cheeks, I remembered the lonely nights, the tears silently shed, the broken promises, the dreams that never came true. Oh, it's nothing, Ethan. Just a little accident. You know how it is, I answered, trying to hide my embarrassment. I understand, Ethan said with a reassuring smile. It happens to everyone. Don't worry about it. I let out a relieved sigh, grateful for Ethan's kind attitude.
Yeah.
I know. But it's still embarrassing, I admitted. Ethan nodded understandingly and said, "Of course, but you handled it very calmly." I think I would have panicked. He joked, trying to ease the tension of the moment. I laughed softly, feeling more at ease with Ethan's presence. Well, at least one good thing came out of it. We got to clean the cafeteria table and floor, I commented. Ethan smiled. See, I admire your ability to joke even in a situation like this. But you didn't answer me. Do you have a boyfriend? No, I don't, I answered with a half smile. Ethan said with a smile, "Do you have any plans after class? Wanna go grab a coffee?" Surprised, I felt my heart skip a beat at Ethan's invitation. Coffee sounds nice, I replied. My smile widened as I prepared for the encounter. I was battling the negative thoughts filling my mind. I tried to find the courage to move forward, but an inner voice whispered doubts and fears. What if I messes this up too and ruin everything? What if I wasn't his type? What if I wasn't good enough? These questions echoed in my mind, fueling anxiety and doubt. As I arrived at the location, I saw Ethan waiting for me outside the cafe with a warm smile. Ethan approached and greeted me with a gentle gesture. "Hey, Kendall. Glad to see you," he said. His voice was soft and comforting. I returned the greeting with a nervous smile. "Hi, Ethan. I'm glad to see you too," I replied. I felt my heart pounding fiercely in my chest. We entered the cafe together. The cozy, warm atmosphere brought comfort to me, slightly easing my anxiety with Ethan's presence. We found a table in the corner of the cafe and sat down. We exchanged smiles and small talk as we decided on our orders. Soft ambient music filled the space between us, creating a calm and relaxed atmosphere. I gazed at Ethan with admiration, impressed by his kindness. Ethan gently took my hand and said with eyes full of sincerity, "Kendall, from the moment I saw you in college, I knew you were special." I smiled. "Oh, Ethan. You're making me blush. It's the truth. There's a light in you. A kindness that illuminates the world around you. I just want to be a part of that glow," Ethan said softly. I don't know what to say. "Ethan, you're so kind," I murmured. "It's true. Since I've gotten to know you, I've felt something different. It's a connection I can't explain, but it definitely exists," Ethan confessed, looking into my eyes. My eyes met his. I smiled shyly. "You've always been so kind to me, Ethan." I looked away for a moment, trying to understand Ethan's words. Ethan slowly leaned closer. Now our faces were just inches apart. "Kendall, would you like to try a more serious relationship with me?" he asked. I couldn't react for a moment. A flood of memories hit me, taking me back to the days when my relationship with Scott was full of promises and sweet words. I remembered the moments when he made me feel special, loved, and safe. But the shadow of how Scott changed, the moments of pain and sadness he caused, also flashed in my mind. I didn't want to suffer again. "Ethan, I need time to think," I finally answered. "It's all so sudden and complicated." Ethan looked at me a bit surprised. After all, I had said I didn't have a boyfriend. "Is there someone?" he asked anxiously. "There's no one. I mean, there was someone in the past." I began. My voice was a whisper filled with uncertainty. "It's difficult to explain right now. I'm not considering a romantic relationship at the moment," I explained. I carefully chose my words to avoid hurting Ethan. "I don't want you to take offense. This isn't personal. You're a kind person, and I value our friendship very much. I want to maintain that, I said. Ethan nodded understandingly. Of course, Kendall. I understand. In the days that followed, Ethan proved to be a true friend. He gave me time and space to sort out my emotions. We continued to share laughter, deep conversations, and meaningful moments, deepening our friendship even further. One day, as we were talking about our common interests, Ethan suggested an idea. How about volunteering at a charity? That's wonderful, I replied excitedly. We dedicated time and effort together, helping those most in need. We shared moments of compassion and solidarity. This experience brought us even closer, strengthening our bond of friendship in a unique and special way. Working side by side, I realized how genuine Ethan was. He not only respected my choices but also encouraged good deeds. At the end of that day, on our way home, I was smiling next to Ethan. I was feeling grateful to have such a trustworthy friend. As time passed, I began to trust Ethan more. He always listened to me without any judgment, offering comfort and encouragement when I needed it most. One day, as we were resting after a volunteer activity, I started to speak. Ethan, there's something important I need to tell you, I said with a trembling voice. Ethan turned to me, looking concerned. Of course, Kendall. What's up? He asked. It's about my ex-husband, I began. My voice was a bit choked. Our relationship wasn't healthy. He was abusive. Ethan's face showed shock and concern. Oh my. Are you okay? Ethan asked. I'm okay, now. It's all thanks to my friend Erica who helped me when I hit rock bottom. But I wanted you to know this. Because I feel safe with you and I trust you. Ethan gently squeezed my hand. Thank you for telling me this, Kendall. I've never met anyone as brave and inspiring as you. I'm always here for you, he said sincerely. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders by sharing my story with Ethan, and in that moment, I felt closer to him than ever before. Summoning all the courage I could muster, I decided to ask the question that had been swirling in my mind. Ethan, have you found someone special? A girlfriend? I asked. My eyes were fixed on his, longing for an answer. No, Kendall. I haven't found anyone as special as you. You're the most wonderful person I've ever met. Being by your side is all I want. Ethan's words filled my heart with warmth and joy. Ethan, I've never met anyone like you either, I confessed, confident in expressing my feelings. Being with you means so much to me. And then Ethan and I embraced. We were united by our love and understanding of each other, ready to face the challenges and joys life had in store for us together. Our relationship blossomed and became truly special. The days were filled with laughter, deep conversations, and moments of pure happiness. A month after graduating from college, we decided to take the next step in our journey together. In an intimate and moving ceremony, Ethan and I got married. We were surrounded by the love and support of friends and family. It was a day filled with smiles, tears of joy, and vows of eternal love. After marriage, I continued to pursue my dream of becoming a judge, while Ethan decided to dedicate his professional life to seeking justice and equality for those most in need as a public defender. One morning at work, I was preparing for another day of hearings amid the busy routine of the courthouse. Among the cases to be tried was a homicide case caused by a drunk driving accident. As I asked the defendant to enter the courtroom, I felt a chill run down my spine. As the man entered, my eyes widened in disbelief, and my heart nearly leaped out of my chest. It was my ex-husband, Scott. He was looking at me with a mix of surprise and anxiety. I never imagined our paths would cross again in this way. Shocked, I lost my words for a moment, my mind reeling trying to understand this unusual situation. Scott stared at me with a mixture of surprise and discomfort. Our eyes met for a moment, and I saw guilt and regret in his. I thought about how this man, who was once my husband, was now in such a miserable situation. I concluded that divorce had been the right decision. If I were still married to Scott, I might have been in a difficult situation too. Lost in thought, I maintained my composure and professionalism amid this shocking development. "Mr. Scott, please take your seat. We'll begin the trial," I said. Scott nodded and headed to the defendant's seat with a tense expression. I watched him sit down. I began the trial. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're gathered here today for the trial of Scott Rodriguez, charged with involuntary manslaughter," I said in a firm voice. During the trial, I listened carefully to witness testimonies and analyzed the evidence presented. I remembered my dedication to justice and my responsibility as a judge to apply the law fairly. "Mr. Scott, do you understand the charges against you?" I said in a firm, determined voice. Scott answered in a trembling voice, "Yes, Your Honor. I understand. Do you understand the severity of the involuntary manslaughter charge you're facing?" I asked. Scott nodded, lowering his head. "Yes, Your Honor. I know I made a mistake." "I see. Now, please tell us about the events that led to the tragedy in question," I continued. As Scott testified, I listened carefully and asked necessary questions to uncover the facts. After considering all the evidence presented and hearing arguments from both sides, I carefully deliberated on the verdict. My decision would have a significant impact on Scott's life and the pursuit of justice. Finally, the time came to announce the decision in court. I delivered the verdict in a firm, confident voice. Based on the evidence presented and witness testimonies, this court finds the defendant, Scott Rodriguez, guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The irresponsible act of drunk driving led to tragic and irreversible consequences. Therefore, in accordance with the law, the defendant is sentenced to 10 years of rigorous imprisonment. I faithfully fulfilled my duty as a judge, striving to ensure that the law was applied fairly and impartially. After the trial, I returned home with a worried expression. My husband Ethan immediately noticed the change in my demeanor and looked at me carefully. Noticing the seriousness in my eyes, Ethan asked, "You okay, honey?" I took a deep breath before speaking. "Ethan, there's something I need to talk to you about." "It's important." "Of course, I'm listening," I said in a trembling voice. Today, I had to preside over a sensitive case in court. Ethan said in surprise, "What happened?" I spoke, holding back tears. "It was Scott. He appeared as the defendant." Ethan frowned, trying to understand the gravity of the situation. "Scott? Your ex-husband?" I nodded. "Yes. It was an involuntary manslaughter case. He caused an accident while drunk driving. I had to sentence him to 10 years in prison." Ethan responded, shocked, "Oh, Kendall. That must have been incredibly difficult for you." I said with tears in my eyes, "It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. I know it's my duty as a judge to apply the law, but seeing Scott in that situation. After all, I once shared my life with him." Ethan came closer and embraced me, offering words of comfort. "You did the right thing, honey. I'll support you in whatever you need." I leaned into Ethan's arms, feeling a mix of relief at being able to share this burden and gratitude for having such an understanding partner. Ethan seemed to feel a tightness in his chest seeing how affected I was. As he gently held me, an idea seemed to start forming in his mind. After a moment of silence, Ethan said in a soft voice, "Kendall, I know this is a difficult time for both of us, but have you ever thought about adopting a child? I looked up at Ethan in surprise at the unexpected suggestion. I was speechless for a moment, then said, "Adopt a child?" "Yes, honey. I'm sure we'd make great parents," Ethan replied. I felt a warmth spread in my chest at the thought of having a family with Ethan, despite the challenges I'd faced in the past. I answered with shining eyes, "Ethan, that's a wonderful idea. I'd love to adopt a child with you." Ethan smiled, seemingly imagining the bright future awaiting us. With our hearts full of hope and anxiety, we headed to the nearest orphanage. As we passed through the facility's gates, there was an atmosphere filled with expectation. As we walked down the hallways of the orphanage, Ethan and I were introduced to various children. Each had their own story and personality. But when we met Ruby, our hearts were touched in a special way. 9-year-old Ruby had curly hair framing her delicate face and almond-shaped eyes that showed a mix of shyness and curiosity. She was huddled in a corner of the room, observing others with a cautious and reserved expression. As I approached her, I felt a protective instinct welling up inside me. I gently crouched down next to Ruby and gave her a warm, welcoming smile. "Hi, Ruby. How are you?" I said gently. Ruby looked at me with a mixture of surprise and anxiety. It was as if she was used to being ignored or treated with indifference. Ruby answered in a soft voice, "Yes, I'm fine. Thank you." I sensed Ruby's hesitation and tried to approach carefully, respecting the child's space and time. "My name is Kendall. And this is Ethan. We're here looking for a child to become part of our family. Would you like to talk with us?" Ruby stared at Ethan and me. Her eyes were a mix of hope and fear. She seemed to know that deciding to trust us might change her life forever. Ruby whispered with a shy smile, "Yes, I'd like to talk." And so Ruby began to become part of our family, bringing light into our lives. Ruby brought joy and light to the home we built together. At first, Ruby's adjustment to her new family was difficult. She was very shy and found it hard to adapt to the new environment. Interactions were characterized by moments of uncomfortable silence and awkwardness. But Ethan and I didn't give up on her. With infinite patience and unwavering love, we were determined to help Ruby overcome her fears and feel like part of the family. We created a warm, safe environment where Ruby could be herself without judgment. Little by little, Ruby began to open up and trust us more than she had ever trusted anyone before. Over time, the relationship between Ruby, Ethan, and me blossomed into a bond of mutual love and trust. We became a true family, facing life's challenges together and celebrating joys as one. As the days passed, Ruby increasingly discovered how much she was loved and cherished in her new family. One day, Ruby came home from school and headed towards us. Ethan and I were waiting for her with warm smiles. "Hello, sweetheart. How was school today?" I asked lovingly. "It was good," she answered with a shy smile. Ethan nodded, encouraging her. "Anything interesting happen in class? Tell us about it." "Yeah. We had a science lesson about the solar system. It was really cool. We learned about the planets and their orbits," she shared, somewhat animated. Ethan and I exchanged approving glances, delighted by Ruby's enthusiasm. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Sounds like you had fun," I said proudly. "Yeah. It was fun," Ruby agreed, seeming more comfortable sharing her day's events with her new family. And in the midst of laughter and conversation, Ruby seemed to realize she was beginning to truly feel at home by our side. I was experiencing the happiest time of my life. Finally, by the side of a loving husband and an adorable daughter, I had found the happiness I'd been seeking so much. The past of suffering and pain had been replaced by a present filled with love, understanding, and mutual support. Meanwhile, Scott, while serving his sentence, seemed to be reflecting on his choices and regrets. He had realized the value of true love and family too late. But I had already moved on, leaving the shadows of the past behind. In the end, I found true happiness by the side of those who loved me unconditionally. And no regret or remorse could shake the peace and fulfillment I had finally found in life.